Alex Atrea podcast. Our guest today has lived a very extraordinary life. He's a prominent Southern California civil litigator, and in 1970s, he was a wayward West Side teenager finding ways to get backstage with the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and B.B. King. He's the author of the critically acclaimed new memoir, Welcome to Fabulous Angeles. Richard Lefkowitz, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing great. Greetings from California. It's nice to meet you, Shreya, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I wanted to start off with a quote of yours from an interview about how you had to inhabit the cells of your body to write this book, going back so many decades. So can we talk a little bit about how that felt physically and mentally to bring yourself back to the 1970s and 80s growing up?
It was definitely a mixed bag. You have to really feel it. How can I expect the reader to feel something if I don't feel it? If I'm not laughing, if I'm not crying, if I'm not vested emotionally in it, and that's okay. There's stories that are superficial and there's a place for that too. But for the story I wanted to write about what it was like in the 1970s, a tumultuous time of great artistic spirit and revolution, a time where you could go up to the Sunset Strip in LA and run into the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin. It was easy to go hang out with some of the biggest stars in the dressing rooms, like you said, B.B. King or Stevie Wonder or Muddy Waters, these things. I had to be in that room. I had to smell the smoke of the Whiskey A Go-Go or the Roxy Theater. And frankly, the toughest portions were the internal ones at home, the nuclear family. I had to feel that trauma again. I had to go through it. Well, I don't ever mention the word trauma. I'm not there to analyze. That's a deeper dive for a subsequent volume. But for this one, I had to feel it to transmit it. And so there was a lot of joy in it. And it's a great feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment. But there was a lot of anguish too.
hmm Yeah, and I can imagine that, like, especially because the times now are so different to what they were in the 70s, especially, let's say, for example, even in the way that we listen to music now, for example. Now we have like instant streaming apps and stuff like that. But, in the 70s, we had analog FM radios, and that was the way that you'd listen to music. So how do you feel the music scene has changed from, the 70s to now? Because I know you're a musician yourself as well.
I'm not going to badmouth technology. I think it's great. I
hmm
love streaming services and I love satellite radio. I've
hmm
got hundreds of channels in my car with no commercials. It's great. But by the same token, it's homogenous, it's kind of sterile, and there isn't the human connection. And machines make great music. And there's lots of great music out there now. But it was different. It was more humanity to it. And there were big audiences. The radio stations in Los Angeles, what they called AOR, album oriented rock, were filled with big audiences or only a couple. Same with the TV channel. How many? There were 8 or 9 TV channels in major markets, and they had big audiences. So the music had a big voice. When the new Led Zeppelin album came out, you couldn't escape hearing The Song Remains the Same or House of the Holy, Dancing Days of 1970. I mean, they were everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was feeling it. And there was more of a sense of community.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That kind of brings us back to the core topic of this episode, I'd say, which is about the psychedelic new age of the optimistic youth movement. And I wanted to ask you how you feel that we can work now to seek the utopian dreams of the 1970s and this generation now.
That is the operative question. You hit on it, Shreya. And I
hmm
don't have a simple, if I had the answer, I don't know what I could do. I could try to change the world on my own, but I don't. I need help. And so the
Yeah.
question is, what happened back then? Now, while the book itself is
hmm
not, does not reach any conclusions, it's up to the reader to evaluate, analyze, or just may be entertained or maybe somewhat educated about the social history of Los Angeles and the culture. But because I grew up at in that special place, that special time, I was infused with optimism, and even in the architecture. So it was called a Googie style, space age themes. If you've ever been to the Los Angeles airport, there's a building there, the theme building looks like a spaceship. The sports arena was shaped like a spaceship. the diners and coffee houses were all futuristic shapes, cantilevers and arrows. There was just a great time. And then the music itself also was very optimistic. We could change the world. The people have the power, right? So you asked me the operative question that I don't have a simple answer to, but I think it's not about the answer so much as it is A, what you just did, asking the right question, being focused on what we can do, with B, together as a community, how do we get back to what we were talking about back then, which is the age of harmony and peace? How do we do that? And that is the question. And we can, I turn it on you. What do you think, Shreya? How
Oh,
do we do it?
that's a tough one because there's so many aspects of it, right? It's like, treating everyone with love and respect. And, I think a lot of people tend to have biases sometimes. And I'm just like, if we all just unite as one, you know what I mean? Or they're just like love and peace, which I think was the message primarily in the 70s with the rock and roll scene, which was like love and peace. A lot of that, to be fair, was the psychedelics talking, but all of that essentially is breaking down all this like perception and anxiety about, just wanting to love and have peace within everyone. I don't think one person could solve it. I think it's more of a community effort, to be fair. But yeah, definitely. And going back to the 70s, I did want to ask because I know your book highlights many escapades within, backstage and going to see different celebrities at the time. So, what was one of your favorite memories that you'd like to share now, or accounts from the book that, you had a really cool experience with?
There's so many. I just want to address what you say because it's such an important question. And the book isn't about what should we do in the present day. It's just a story.
Yeah.
And we could talk about Stevie Wonder calling me from a club because my friend Moxie gave him the phone and wishing me a good life. And I considered it my mission statement. Or walking into the Whiskey a Go Go on BB King and having him treat us 14-year-old kids like kings, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Or Muddy Waters, who wrote the song Rolling Stone that the band took its name from, being there and being so hospitable to us. It wasn't that hard, frankly. We just had the nerve to do it. We just
Yeah.
decided that this was our town, we were going to do it. But you mentioned psychedelics, and that's therein lies the rub, is that the thing that opened the door to
Mhm.
this peace and love, this "All You Need Is Love" song by the Beatles, the very thing that expanded our minds turned into the thing that killed it, and it became a failed generation. And like I said, I'm not a social historian. I'm just writing what I think is kind of a funny, hopefully clever story about the truth. And my mission statement was just tell the truth. Me and Moxie, my best friend, having the nerve and the verve, and him having the charisma to go walk into the room with the Rolling Stones and sit down on the drum riser with Keith Richards and have him give me life lessons. I mean, that is the story. And the best friendship followed or parallel with a first love romance. And like Cat Stevens says, the first cut is the deepest, that first love, and what it was like being 16 and 17 and thinking this is the woman I'm going to spend my life with, which silly, I'm laughing at it now, but at the time
Mhm.
it's real. And so all these things I think are universal. The meaning to me was that in 1978, when I was 21, walking into a hotel room led by my Sherpa, the charismatic Moxie Bigham, to go into this room in a hotel near UCLA in West Village and sit down with Mick Jagger and party and drink and do other things and just be treated as an equal. To me, somebody who hated going to school, I was the English major who cut classes to write. I
Mhm.
didn't go to my classes in college. I got DQ'd. I got disqualified for none of, I didn't show up for my finals. Why? Because I was seeking a higher truth. When you read Emerson and Thoreau and the Transcendentalists and the Romanticists, Blake and Shelley, their message is not go sit in a room with four gray walls and learn from some guy. Their message is let nature be your teacher. And that's what I thought I was doing, however misguided it might be to sit on the side of the San Diego Freeway and smoke a joint, think I'm going to reach Nirvana by putting on a radio station and hearing the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
So there's lots of those episodes. But the interesting thing is that you mentioned psychedelics is the thing that inspired so many was a dead end. And it just goes back to your great question at the beginning. How in the world do we get back that? What happened? How did we end up here where there's no such thing as the truth anymore?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I do think that, as you said earlier as well, the more that we talk about it, the more, the masses will be aware of just the need to be able to approach the quote unquote utopian world. We might not reach that, but try our best every day to, adhere to that. I also did want to ask, because the book is about a lot of the 70s, and I wanted to ask, were you always wanting to share these experiences, or was it like a moment in time where you were like, oh, I should write a book? So how has that journey come about for you as an author?
So glad you asked that. I
Mhm.
really felt impelled to do it all along. And of course, I was busy doing it, and I had frustrated attempts at writing about it. In fact, as Welcome to Fabulous Angeles, The Rock and Roll Adventures of a Wayward West Side Teen is really a story, a portrait of an artist as a young man, somebody who's struggling with wanting to be creative, being shamed for it because my parents on the other side of what we called then the generation gap in the culture clash could not understand growing up in the depression how you could make a living, put bread on the table when they had to get their primary needs met. Mine were already met, and I wanted to move on to evolution of art and spirit and seeking higher consciousness and all these things. And they shamed me for it and told me I was a fool. And while they weren't necessarily wrong, when something is inside you, especially a creative spirit, if you deny it and frustrate it, it will come back with a vengeance, detrimentally. It will hurt you. And that's what happened to me. I went, around at dead ends and driving in circles trying to, because I wanted to tell the story. I knew at the time there's even in Welcome to Fabulous Los Angeles in chapter 8,
Mhm.
where with Moxie at a concert with the band Traffic, and the opening act was free with Paul Rogers, who had a big song, All Right Now, Baby, It's All Right Now. You may know that song, many do. And it's even, I feel like I was anointed or appointed to tell this story because I'm going to be the scribe with my life. Did it happen? No, I became a lawyer. Okay, well, that's okay too. I like going to court. It's cool. I don't mind. But was it my truest, highest calling? No, I always wanted to do it. Same thing with the music. You see the guitars, and I've
Yeah.
always recorded. I can't stop writing the songs. They'll tell me you can shame me all you want, but they're still coming. The creative juices flow. So, and I get it. I understand. I'm not carrying any grudges about it. This book is as objective as any person could be. There's no chip on my shoulder. I'm just trying to tell a story. I don't get mad at my parents, but they had it much worse, harder than me growing up. So it's not about me trying to settle scores or anything. So the fact that I didn't do it before doesn't matter. It just came out better now. It's the same with the music. I'm recording songs this week. So it's just an evolutionary process that has just taken. Some people are late bloomers, and I'm in my 60s. I finally did what I always thought I was here to put on this earth to do.
Yeah, congratulations. Are you planning to release the songs that you're writing at the moment on like Spotify and stuff?
Interesting you say that. Of course, the goal is the original music, and that's a discussion for another day. Hopefully, we'll
Hmm.
be sitting here next year talking about the new song. So the new songs, because I'm not an engineer, I can record them pretty well on the digital recording on Logic or GarageBand. Everybody can record at home now. But what I did do is put up a Spotify playlist with the songs from Welcome to Fabulous Angeles.
Uh,
There goes
nice.
a little Bose speaker, but it doesn't matter. So,
Hmm.
I was using it as a book holder. Welcome to Fabulous Angels playlist. I went through the book and I said, oh, okay, this would be a fun playlist, right? Actually, my
Hmm.
daughter, who's probably about your age, said, you should do a playlist. Like, what a great idea. And then I had
Hmm.
600 songs. And I said, wait a minute, that's a
Hmm.
little much. So I broke it down into 10 sections. There's 34 chapters in the book, but I like a couple, three chapters. So you can read the book and then follow along with the Spotify playlist.
That's awesome. I'll probably check it out now. I also did want to ask, just bringing it back to when you decided to pursue law and then also wanting to be part of the music scene in a way. So, how did you decide in terms of, I'm going to study law, or what was your first experience in the sense of like having to choose between the two worlds?
I resisted it my whole life because it's like, you should be a lawyer. You have the big mouth. Also, I'm Jewish. If you're not an accountant or, a doctor, what are you? You become a lawyer, right? So it's like a
Mm-hmm.
cultural thing. So what are you going to do? And then, all my whole life, it's like, oh my God, but that mouth, you're going to be a lawyer one day. Like, so I had no interest. And frankly, I don't have a love of the nuts and bolts of law. I have lawyer friends who love discussing the civil code and analyzing the changes in the law. It's fine. I like the people part of it, and it's okay. And I do find it interesting and challenging. And frankly, it's bread and butter. I make a living, right? I made a living doing it for 33 years. But I didn't decide overnight. What happened is I never was able to take the risk to become a rock star. If you read the bios, I remember the Aerosmith book that all the members wrote. They lived in a house and starved until they
Mhm.
got good. The Rolling Stones, Keith and Mick lived together with Brian Jones, and they didn't have money. They stole food. This is the story. And coming from where I was coming from, I wasn't gonna sacrifice, go starve, move out of my parents' house, especially when I was told what an idiot I was trying to be a quote unquote rock star.
Mhm.
So as time went on, and I didn't go to law school, I didn't become a lawyer till I was 36 and I passed the bar. So I took my time and I didn't really take concrete steps to pursue. I worked at recording studios and I hung out in the crowd, but didn't happen. And so it was just evolved over time. And I said, okay, I guess I'm supposed to go to law school, and I didn't do that till I was 29, 30, 31. So it was an unfolding that took a lot of
Yeah, that's fair. And what was the first time or the first moment that you remember where you played the guitar or were kind of interested in music? First time ever, really?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I haven't given that a lot of thought, but I from a very, very early age, I always loved music. Like my mother was into show tunes. She had a wonderful singing voice. She had sung during World War II. She was in Miami Beach and used to sing with her friends for the troops who used to come in to the hospitals in Miami Beach. And so I grew up around music. My dad had a good ear. He was not trained, but he could tap out songs on the piano. So I genetically was born with an ear where I could hear. So I remember the show tunes and Pete Seeger, the folk singer, and some folk music like that. Because my brother is 3.5 years older, when the Beatles went on Ed Sullivan, so let's just say I was 7, 6. Well, normally, I don't think a 6 or 7-year-old would probably be watching Ed Sullivan variety show on a Sunday night, CBS. But my brother's 10 or so, 11, whatever it was. And so I watched it and just was bedazzled. It wasn't like, oh, you have to be a rock star, but it was just something super fresh, super exciting that you knew was never been seen before in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
And so that's really growing up with the first wave of British music, the Beatles and the Stones. And then later, as I got to be a wayward West Side teen, start smoking weed, it was Led Zeppelin and the Who and the soul searching, the spiritual anthems, all that stuff. But so it's always been in me, and it will always be in me till the very, very end, and probably I hope afterward as well.
Yeah, it's really well said. I think that's the power of music, really, because I've had actually the last guest that I had on the podcast as well. They were a musician, and they said a really nice quote about how music should always be a part of one's life. Like no matter where they are, it's always going to be like a backbeat to your life. And I really think even with musical therapies now and things like that, like it's quite healing, in terms of like the way that music can change lives. So really, really well said. And I wanted to touch back briefly on you mentioned your parents and your brother growing up. And in the book, you've mentioned that you've had a sort of disconnect between, your parents and yourself. And I know currently you've mentioned in a few interviews where you took the active chance to unpack that baggage before you raised your own children. So how did that decision unfold for you?
Music was the life raft.
Hmm.
And is, but especially so, I guess, what is it? Your prefrontal cortex is not completely developed until you're how
Yeah.
old do you have to be? 20 something.
Mid 20s, yeah, around 25.
So you're struggling and so coming out of a fractured home where there was a lot of conflict, a lot of fighting with my mother. She wasn't necessarily the stereotypical Jewish mother, but she became pretty close. And she was very domineering. And we didn't call it gaslighting. We didn't know what that term was back then. But her rule was the truth. Whatever she said was the truth, whether it was true or not. And so being around that and then being able to escape, especially when we turned 16. And in those days, day you turned 16, you were at the DMV, the driver's licenses, and you got your license. And then we were free because with the powerful big wattage radio stations on FM playing these deep cuts, the music literally changed my neurochemistry. Yeah, it's because and yeah, I was a drinker as a teenager, really. Later on, I just drank beer, whatever, got more into that to kind of calm down. But we were pot smokers. And so doing that, give you escaping in the car and just lighting up and getting on the freeway, which is perfectly named. It was the freest way for us, or going to the beach. Now, LA, I don't know if you've been to LA, Shrey, but there's a lot of nature-esque places such as the beach. You can be at the beach, the mountains, or the desert, and you can do all three in an hour and a half. So it was the beach, or it was the Santa Monica Mountains. We used to go up in the Hollywood Hills and get high and put on the music and look at the city. So these things were healing, and of course, back then pot was the medicinal. There was no dispensaries, and I was arrested when I was 16 for
Hmm.
the
Oh.
audacity to have a joint in my car. I went to jail for an
Hmm.
hour until nothing really happened because I was under 18. So
Hmm.
that was a wobbler between a felony and a misdemeanor for just having a joint. So there was a lot of that angst. Plus, we had the war in Vietnam was raging, and even when it calmed down after it, and it became Watergate was the next thing, which seemed like a big deal back then because the president of the United States authorized a burglary. Now that may not seem so bad now, in light of other things that we don't need to talk about today. But
Yeah.
at the time, it was unheard of. In fact, his own party are the one that convinced him he should resign because there was some sense of morality there. So all these things were going on, and the music set us free. So all these things conspire to keep me going. And really, I think it's the only reason I made it to my 60s feeling great, healthy, happy, and well. And we heard so many things that was so untrue about it. I still hear today say, well, we have the jury's still out on pot. What are you kidding me? You've been saying that for 50 years. And by the way, I say that as the man who hasn't smoked in 20 plus years. I don't use it. I don't do anything. It's been over 20 years. But still, that lie persisted. Maybe now that there's money to be made off it, it's okay. So I grew up with all that dissension and in a real fractured society that at the time seemed like the world might just blow up because of nuclear war or nuclear power plant, the 2 Mile Island disaster in the 70s where there was a leakage. All these things that really seemed tragic. And what got us through? The music. And so it really did change us.
The music did change us. I wanted to bring back just briefly to where you mentioned that you were able to meet so many people from the music scene. Was there a change in terms of security back then than there is now? I was just curious because there are many moments highlighted in the book. So I was wondering how you got about the security situation of that.
It had security, but
Hmm.
it didn't take much to outsmart them. We had
Hmm.
these guys in yellow shirts, NES on them, bold letters like they were tough, but it didn't take much to get around them. You could you could talk or bluff or just walk the other way. And if you had the right powders or the right cannabis or just the right wrap, and you could be at the right place, you got to know the right people and connect with right. It wasn't that hard. There it depends. There are little clubs that you could. It was easy to walk backstage. The bigger venues like the Forum where the Lakers played basketball team or any of the bigger places. They were tougher, but still it could be done. And when it really changed, and even though I was 40 or whatever by then, in 2001 was 9/11, New York City. And so when the trade centers went down, all of a sudden, anywhere, tough security. That's when it changed. And that's much later. That's 2001 and I was already 40 and I wasn't trying to sneak into places anymore. But still, that to answer your question, it was pretty lax. And yeah, I'm not saying anybody could do it. If anybody could do it, anybody would have done. It took an attitude, and the attitude we have in Welcome to Fabulous Angeles, there's a chapter named after. The attitude we had is, you own the place. And in the cosmic scheme, we really believe since all we wanted to do was have fun and meant no harm, that we really did.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask if you'd like to play a quick game of rapid fire, just with a few questions. So, first answer that comes to mind. Yeah?
Okay,
All
but
right.
so this is like a lightning round?
Yeah, like a lightning round. Yeah.
Well, what's my limit on, responses? One word, 1 sentence? How long of a
Whatever comes to mind, really. I think you'll figure that out. You'll figure it out with the questions. Okay, number one. What's the ultimate song to blast in the car during a road trip?
Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf?
Very nice. Who had the most electrifying backstage presence in the 70s? The Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin?
Well, backstage, I wasn't backstage with either one. I was in rehearsals with members of the Stones and Led Zeppelin. I was at a hotel on the rooftop where they were throwing the groupies into the pool. So it turned electrifying. I got to give it backstage. How about on stage? I'd have to give. I always the Stones win every time because they're like the archetypes. So we'll give it to the Stones.
Yeah, to the Stones. If you could have a conversation with any historical rock star, who would that be?
Could they be alive now or just anybody?
Yeah, they could be alive now, or they could be. It's up to you.
I would go with somebody I've never met. So
Hmm.
I'd like to talk to John Lennon. He was always my favorite Beatle.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good answer. In one single sentence, what's the ultimate truth your friend Moxie taught you about surviving your youth?
Don't take any dust off of anyone.
Mm. Nice. And if your 17-year-old self could see you sitting here today, what would you say?
Get out of that house and pursue the truth that's beating in your heart. You know it deep inside. Everything you think about your parents is right. It's true. They had a hard life and they have not done the therapy to break that chain. They tried, but you know what you need to do. What you need to do is honor the gifts that God has given.
That's a lovely answer. And I commend you for kind of addressing the whole healing aspect of generational trauma, like breaking the chain, which I think is so important as well. Next question we have is if someone is visiting LA for the first time, because I haven't been to LA actually, so this is a question for me. What are some must visit places, sightseeing, or food that you'd recommend off the top of your head?
Oh, it's easy to say go to Disneyland first, and people go to Universal Studios, and then people go walk through the Hollywood Walk of Fame with the footprints on the ground, and that's all
Mm,
good, and that's probably the right answer. I say just when you get off the plane, go check in your hotel, put your stuff away, and just go to the beach, go up to Malibu or any of the more isolated beaches up there where aren't too many people. Put your feet in the warm, soft sand, your hands there, and just breathe and go, ah. The
yeah.
other thing I would add to that as a corollary is when it gets to be twilight, especially if it rains the day before, go up in the Hollywood Hills and pick your spot. There's plenty. Text me, I'll tell you where. Go up there and just look at the view, and it is panoramic, and you'll be awestruck. And it's real for a major metropolitan city. There is a range of mountains divides what's known as the valley in the city that goes right through the middle of it. And you get up on those mountains, maybe by the Hollywood sign. Everybody knows the Hollywood sign. And you can look out from your left, see downtown and the skyscrapers. Straight ahead, you see Baldwin Hills, LAX, sort of towards the beach. And as you get to the right and see the west side, and of course, you're talking to the wayward West Side team, whose favorite has a lot of affection for the West Side. You look out, see Century City, Westwood, Santa Monica, and the beach. And I'll tell you, it's God's country. Doesn't mean it's not smoggy. I'm not here. This is not a hagiography that I'm going to say everything was always beautiful. It's smoggy. There's crime. There's a ton of traffic. It's all true. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, you ask what to do. I'd say go to what resonates with you, whether it's the Roxy restaurant on Sunset Strip or the Rainbow next door, the legendary clubs with all kinds of legendary whiskey go-go's there. That's all on the same strip, the Sunset Strip. That's fine. You'll find what pulls you. For me, it's nature. Go to the beach, get up in the hills, look at the view. You can't go wrong. I think you find this to be a quite a hospitable place.
Yeah, thank you. I've noted them all down. And what's the single most piece of advice you have for a 20-something-year-old navigating this aspect of their life?
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. I sure was and did, and being a guy, we don't ever wanna ask for help, right? I mean, I would never ask for directions. Nobody knows anything but me, right? So, it's tough, and the social pressure and the internet pressure, everybody it's all based on appearances and looks. Even the music now really started when MTV started music videos in the '80s, and they're all great. It's evolved in many positive ways. Even the recording is so much easier than it was. It may not sound as thick and warm and juicy as the analog tape sound, but still, you have to look good to be a rock star. It's almost pedophilia. These gorgeous 13, 14. I mean, it's almost sick. I don't even want to go there. But what I'm saying is that there's so much pressure. And I have a daughter who's going to be 30 in March, and the son will be 25 this October. And It's different with your own kids because they're not really gonna come to their parents for some certain things, but there's so much peer pressure now in a worse way because you don't even know the people you're being pressured by. It's a social media thing, and none of that really means anything, and I think ultimately, and we'll circle back to this, Shreya, is that while it's not in Welcome to Fabulous Angeles, it's not the subject of that, maybe the next one, is that the reason the whole counterculture failed and everything, I think, and why the radio stations disappeared, it's no more spirituality. It's all materialistic. It's all based upon selfishness and greed. And I think my advice to anybody would be if you can, and I know it's hard, is to try to find whatever the spirituality, whatever it means to you. But there's no excuse for healing and there's no excuse for therapy. I know I needed it, and there's no shame in asking. And hopefully that stigma has been lifted now that we're living in the 2020s.
Yeah, that was such a wonderful answer. Thank you. And with that, we've come to the end of our episode. So, do you have any final words that you'd like to part our listeners with, where we can find you in the book?
Well, I want to thank you, Shrey, and I want to tell you that I admire the work you do. Thank you for putting out there all the positive energy and healing that you put into this world, that
Thank
out
you.
there, podcast universe. And the book is out; it's available. Welcome to Fabulous Angeles, the rock and roll adventures of a wayward West Side teen. It's on the usual suspects online, Amazon, etc., bookshop. It's also in the chain bookstores. And we strongly recommend you support your local independent bookstores as well. But the book is out there. But if you want anything today or right this very second, you can go to fabulousangeles.com. And on our website, we've got all kinds of interesting features, details, and there'll even be a link to this podcast on our events page and anything else I'm up to. So fabulousangeles.com. And yes, reluctantly, I did swallow my inhibitions or my trepidation to get on Facebook. It's not a Richard Lefkowitz account. There is one, but it's Fabulous Angeles on Facebook. We're up to 9,000 plus followers, which is pretty good for about a year. And there's an Instagram account. And so I do post, do my best. I do act as the digital content creator sometimes, but not full time. So Facebook, Instagram, I'll probably have to get on TikTok, fabulousangeles.com. And of course, most importantly, I hope you can enjoy a journey through the past. And it's called Welcome to Fabulous Angeles. And let's see what we can do. Get out of that book. We can all work together, build this community, and bring those utopian values and those dreams and the visions, the best of humanity, into the next decade and century.
Yes, exactly. That's the spirit. Thank you so much, Richard. Lovely talking to you. And yeah, that's the end of the episode. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks, Shreya.